record on. Okay. So week 2, business ethics. What did you guys think of week 1? You both did really well. Did you have any challenges with any of the work?
Not really.
No? Okay. How about you, Hadesha?
No.
Okay. So no challenges. Okay. So everything that we're going to cover tonight in this live lecture is going to pertain to what you have to do as far as homework this week. So your discussion, 2.1, corporate social responsibility, assignment 2.1, organizational ethics, and then assignment 2.2, corporate governance. I'm going to cover all of that in this live lecture. All right, so hopefully it'll help you with your work. Hi, Chelsea. We're coming off mute to participate tonight. Are you okay with that? Chelsea? Okay. Or can you hear me, Chelsea? You can't hear me, or you can't come off mute. Okay, I just want to remind you that, okay, live lecture is for active participation. So I expect everybody to be attentive, and we are going to have conversations. So I would expect that you would make time to do that with live lecture. All right, so let's talk about Business Ethics Week 2. I just want to remind you that late discussions are not going to be accepted. I made an exception during week 1. And if you've got a late discussion, you must email it to me for extra credit. I do not reopen quizzes or exams, okay? I open all coursework early, which allows everybody to work early if you need to. One of the things, has anybody on this call ever seen this movie, The Kite Runner, or read the book?
No.
No.
Okay, so one of the most profound things that I read in this book was, when you tell a lie, you steal someone's right to the truth. All right, so that all falls into our ethics tonight. Let's talk a little bit about organizational ethics. So we're going to define it. We're going to explain the different ethical challenges facing different departments within the organization. We're going to talk a little bit about the HR department's role towards establishing and maintaining a corporate code of ethics. We're going to talk about ethical challenges presented by GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. Have any of you had accounting yet?
I just got done with that class.
Okay, did you guys talk anything about GAAP?
I don't recall talking about it, no.
Okay, so those are generally accepted accounting principles, okay? They're not laws, they're just guidelines that govern accounting. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the potential conflicts of interest within any organizational function. So whether it be HR or accounting or production or marketing, we're going to talk a little bit about conflicts of interest. So what is organizational ethics? Well, it's the principles and standards by which businesses operate. They are best demonstrated through acts of fairness, compassion, integrity, honor, and responsibility. And remember last week we talked a little bit about whether or not business ethics, the term business ethics, is an oxymoron. And this is why. Because a lot of companies just do not demonstrate all of these things. So from week 1, we talked a little bit about business ethics is an area of study separate from general studies of ethics, and that there are 2 very distinct issues we've got going on with ethics in business. Oh, can you guys still see my screen? There we go. So you've got your stakeholders you need to take into consideration. Do you guys remember, or can you provide an example of a stakeholder? We talked about those last week, stakeholders. Can you come off mute and tell me? Remember,
Employees one.
yeah, good, Hadesha. Remember, it's anybody affected by the organization. So the employees, your vendors, your customers, people who own the company, your communities, they are all stakeholders in that company. Organizational culture is defined as the values, beliefs, and norms that all the employees of that organization are sharing. Value chain, another term that you need to know, key functional inputs that an organization provides in the transformation of raw materials into finished products or service. So the value chain, let's see, Randy, what do you do for a living, Randy? Randy?
I didn't hear you, ma'am.
What is it that you do for a living? You're going to school, right?
Yes, ma'am, to be a truck driver.
Okay, do you have any occupation right now, or are you just going to school?
Well, it's just they're teaching how to drive, and we drive on the streets, and
Okay.
ready to take a motor vehicle test.
Okay, so trucking is a great example of a part of the value chain, because without trucking, then a manufacturer would not be able to get their goods to market. So that's an example of part of a value chain. So here's some of the ethical challenges faced by some of the functions within that value chain. For instance, research and development. They've got to have a quality product, but they've got to also be able to get it out the door faster and cheaper than their competitors. Manufacturing faces ethical challenges. They've got to build it fast, but they've also got to build it right. Marketing, they got to make sure they're communicating information, but they've got to make sure that they're not manipulating the information in order to make the sales. Ethics and human resources. Human resources has got to make ethics a priority. They've got to ensure that leadership, selection, and development has an ethical component. They've got to stay abreast of ethical issues, and they've got to ensure that the right people and the policies are in place. Some ethical considerations in accounting. We've got accounting's got financial transactions, so we've got to make sure that the flow of money is being handled properly. Accounting, keeping track of all the financial institutions or financial transactions ethically, and then auditing, making sure that everything is certifiable as honest and true. Here's where we get to the generally accepted accounting principles in accounting. These general guidelines govern the accounting profession. They're not laws, but rather standards of operating procedures within the accounting profession. A challenge is that they are open to interpretation by whoever is applying them. So that means there must be an awful lot of gray area in GAAP. What's a conflict of interest? Well, it's a situation in which one relationship or obligation places you in direct conflict with an existing relationship or obligation. For instance, meeting the needs of stakeholders, increase profits for shareholders. That is the main focus of any organization. That may not be in the best interest of employees or in the community if the organization moves to another country. So conflict of interest. Selling a product that has a potential to be harmful to consumers, conflict of interest. Can you think of an example of a product that's been marketed out there and has been found to be harmful? Anybody? Jaquetta, we're coming off mute to talk.
I didn't hear the question. My son was yelling.
Okay. So can any of you think of a product that has been manufactured and later been found to be harmful to consumers? Okay. Like Toyota, airbags. Okay, good. That's a good one, Chelsea. Anybody else have an example?
No, ma'am, you already said the airbags.
Okay.
There was something about Johnson & Johnson products.
Yeah. Okay. The talcum powder, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
I would also say when the Galaxy Note 7s were exploding.
Okay. That's right. I remember that. So those are all really good examples. Selling a product that has the potential to be harmful to the environment. Can you guys think of any products out there that might have the potential to be harmful to our environment that we're making right now? I'd say a big one would be crude oil. Have one crude oil spill and the whole area is a mess. Can anybody think of anything else? That might be harmful to our environment?
Cars.
Cars, yeah. Some cars can be, yeah. Volkswagen, they got in trouble a few years ago for fudging on their EPA controls or their smog controls or something. So really good example. Really good example. So those are conflicts of interest. Here's another conflict of interest. You guys see that? You've got a shark as a lifeguard. So am I the only one who sees a conflict of interest here? So I thought it was funny. All right, so any questions on chapter 3 at all?
No.
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, good deal. So let's talk a little bit about corporate social responsibility. And that is a topic of discussion 2.1. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. Maybe this will help you get a handle on how to answer your discussion. So we're going to define it. We're going to describe the difference between instrumental and social contract approaches. We're going to explain the business argument for doing well by doing good. We're going to summarize the 5 forces behind corporate social responsibility. We're going to define 3 types, and we're going to explain the triple bottom line. Hadesha, did you guys talk about the triple bottom line when you had your accounting class?
It sounds familiar.
Okay. All right. So corporate social responsibility is described as the actions of an organization that are targeted toward achieving a social benefit over and above maximizing profits for its shareholders and meeting all of its legal obligations. That is corporate social responsibility in a nutshell. There's 2 approaches. There's your instrumental approach, and that was advocated in 1976 by Milton Friedman. In his opinion, he says that the only obligation of a corporation is to maximize profits for its shareholders in providing goods and services that meet the needs of its customers. He argues that doing anything other than that is unethical in and of itself. His argument supports the rights of individuals to make money with their investments no matter what. So kind of black and white, also kind of cold, wouldn't you agree? I think all companies have a social obligation. All right, so the social contract approach. This is the perspective that a corporation has an obligation to society as a whole over and above the expectation of its shareholders. It's in direct opposition to Milton Friedman's instrumental, and it acknowledges that there's an outside world that is affected by the actions of the corporation. Modern social contract argues that since the corporation depends on the world around them and its resources, that it has an obligation to society. So which one do you think? Which one do you agree with? The instrumental or the social contract?
So,
Okay. How about the rest of you? Jaquetta, Daisha, Chelsea?
Instrumental, I guess.
So you think the only obligation of an organization is to make money for its shareholders, right?
No, probably social.
Okay. So you think that because they use the resources, then they have an obligation back to society to be more responsible.
Yes.
Okay. Now, how about you, Jaquetta? Chelsea? Jaquetta and Chelsea, can you hear me? All right, good. All right. Good deal. All right. So let me ask you this. Do you think there can be a balance between the two? Can a company maximize profits while also maintaining an obligation to society? Is that possible, do you think? Remember, I want you, if you can, I want you to come off mute.
I think that it could be possible.
Okay, so you think that they can balance making money by also being socially aware?
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think so.
Good. Okay. Does anybody else agree with that?
I think it would be difficult, but it is possible.
Okay, good. I think it would be hard to balance the two as well. But I definitely think it's possible. Okay, so what drives corporate social responsibility? Well, transparency. I mean, nowadays, everything is out in the open. We have an information-driven economy, and it's made it practically impossible for businesses to sweep bad behavior under the rug. And it also includes good behavior. We're so transparent that information is out there at the snap of fingers. Knowledge, we're more aware because we are, again, an information-driven economy. It means that we as consumers have more information at our disposal than we ever have in history. Sustainability, our natural systems are in serious and fast decline. While the global population is growing, corporations are starting to feel some pressure to incorporate into their business models how to be more environmentally friendly. Globalization, global reforms are forcing corporations to balance private concerns with broader public interests. And the failure of the public sector. Most people around the world have become really disillusioned by the performance of their governments. People no longer have confidence that the government is the best or most appropriate way for addressing a growing list of social problems. And that is very true. People are starting to take things into their own hands now because they don't trust the government to do their jobs. Here's some types of corporate social responsibility. Ethical, it's the purest, most legitimate. It pursues a clearly defined sense of social conscience, manages financial obligations while pursuing balance with responsibilities to society. So there, the purest, most legitimate is the ethical, and that's that one that's in balance between instrumental and social contract. Altruistic is your philanthropic approach. So they, your corporations give back to the local community. Many people argue that these initiatives can be accomplished without concern for overall profitability, doing the greatest good for the greatest number. Does anybody remember what ethical theory that is? Doing the greatest good for the greatest number? Can you remember back to chapter 1? We had 3 of them. We had virtue ethics, we had utilitarianism, and we had universal. So does anybody remember what the altruistic? Doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Anybody at all?
I can't say the word. I think it starts with a U.
Universal.
Is it universal? That's
Yeah.
how you say it?
Yeah, the greatest, doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And then your third type of CSR is strategic. It's where corporations target those social initiatives which they perceive will generate the most positive publicity for them. So they really don't have a heart for it. They're going after the most popular, and that could cause some perception problems. So those are your 3 types of CSR, okay? So triple bottom line, we're going to talk about that real quick. In addition to the traditional financial bottom line contained in annual reports, the triple bottom line summarizes in the annual report an organization's involvement in social and environmental initiatives. That is a term that you must become familiar with, the triple bottom line, or 3BL, okay? So not only do you have your financial bottom line, net profits, gross profit, whatever you want to, however you want to define it, organizations are also starting to have a triple bottom line, which summarizes their involvement in social and environmental initiatives. So what do you think it means when they say doing well by doing good? What does that mean? Doing well by doing good. Think about that. What does it mean in terms of business?
By achieving something.
Okay, so I think what they're driving at with that question is, if a company does good in its corporate social responsibility, might they do better as a business? Have you ever boycotted a business because they've done something just so egregious that you never wanted to buy their product again?
No, man.
I did that when I was looking at buying a house.
Okay, good. So if a company does good things, then it just follows, according to this, that people will drift towards that business. That's what that means. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah, you got it, Chelsea. The business is doing good, meaning they exceed profits, but they're also good or fair to their customers. Very good. So that's what that means. All right, so our last chapter. Anybody have any questions about corporate social responsibility?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to see perfect discussions then. All right, let's move on to the final chapter here. Chapter 5, corporate governance. So we're going to explain what that is. We're going to understand better the responsibilities of the board of directors. We're going to explain the differences between King 1 and King 2 reports. That's going to be in your quiz this week. And we're going to explain comply or explain and comply or else. So corporate governance, the system by which business corporations are directed and controlled. Well, who's your board of directors? Well, typically elected by the owners to represent the interests of the shareholders. They oversee typically the governance of the organization and consists of inside and outside members. And as you'll learn as you read this chapter, there are a lot of boards of directors who drop the ball on corporate governance. It means they don't do a very good job. You got audit committees. They're staffed by members of the board of directors and independent or outside directors. They oversee the financial reporting, monitor internal controls, monitor the choice of accounting policies, and oversee hiring and performance of external auditors. Again, you're going to see in Chapter 5 examples of bad behavior all around with no oversight on finances. You've got a compensation committee staffed by members of the board of directors. They're responsible for setting compensation for CEOs and other senior executives. Your corporate governance committee, typically staffed again by members of the board of directors, monitors ethical performance of the corporation. Again, lots of examples of how they drop the ball out there. Oversees compliance with company's internal code of ethics and ensures compliance with federal and state regulations on corporate conduct. So the two reports that you need to be familiar with, the King 1 report was developed in 1994. It incorporated a code of corporate practices and conduct that looked beyond the corporation itself, taking into account its impact on the larger community. The report took a more integrated approach to corporate governance, recognize the impact and involvement of all stakeholders. All right. King 2 report took it a little further. It formally recognized the need to move the stakeholder model, which is the King 1 report. Hold on here. And consider the triple bottom line as opposed to single bottom line. The triple bottom line recognizes the economic, environmental, and social impact. And it also has a companies must comply or explain it, why they're not, or companies must comply or else. So you see the difference between those two. You've got to comply or explain why you're not complying, or you've got to comply or else. What do you think that or else means? Troubles maybe? With the law, with the SEC, with the FTC?
Nothing good.
Nothing good, that's right. You must comply or else, or you must comply or explain. That's the difference between the two. And there we go, right there. So comply or explain, a set of guidelines that require companies to abide by a set of operating standards or explain why they choose not to. It gave companies flexibility to comply with standards or provide vague reasons why they didn't. So it pretty much had no teeth, okay? It was going to just gum you to death. Comply or else, on the other hand, is a little meatier. It's a more aggressive set of guidelines that require companies to abide by a set of operating standards or face stiff financial penalties. Sarbanes-Oxley uses this approach. So SOX uses this approach. So the comply or else has got more teeth in it as opposed to comply or explain where it doesn't have any teeth. Effective corporate governance. You know, Companies have got to create a climate of trust and candor or honest, foster a culture of open dissent. And what that means is make it okay for somebody to disagree or to challenge or to want to know why something's being done. Create an environment that encourages open dissent. Mix up the roles. Don't have the same people in the same roles all the time. Make sure everybody as an individual is accountable. Let the board assess their leadership talent and evaluate the board's performance. All right. So any questions about chapter 5?
No.
Corporate governance. Okay, so your assignment, I think it's 2.2 is on corporate governance. Make sure that you read the articles that are assigned to that assignment, okay? That's the only way you're going to be able to complete it successfully. Next week, we're not going to have a live lecture, but in lieu of live lecture, I'm going to be emailing you all a case study that addresses software piracy. I'd like you to read it and be prepared to write a summary. To receive credit for attending or watching live lecture, well, we're not going to watch it, but to get credit for it, you must demonstrate that you've read the case study by arguing for the behavior or against the behavior. And in addition, you must tell me which of the 10 commandments of computer ethics was broken, if any. Does anybody have any questions about that? No live lecture? Okay, all right, all right.
No.
I will send that to you. Well, is the end of the week soon enough, or would you like me to send it sooner?
Maybe sooner.
Sooner? Okay, why don't I just,
For me.
okay, why don't I just go ahead and send it after live lecture, okay? That
Okay.
works out. Okay. All right, guys, is anybody having any challenges with anything? Any concerns about this week? Are you getting through the new My Course Connection okay? I know, Chelsea, how you feel about it, but how about the rest of you? How are you doing navigating through it?
It's good.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. All right, so no problems. All right, guys. Well, listen, you guys have a wonderful week, and it looks like we've got some storms coming in, so be safe, and I will see you week after next.
Okay.
Have a good one.